And it says, at the time of his descent on earth, demigods in the form of raining clouds sounded musical instruments in the sky. The celestial musicians, the Gandharvas, sang the glories of the Lord, while celestial dancing girls, known as apsaras, danced in joyful ecstasy. Okay, very nice verse. Everyone was very happy. Okay, so that is because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead uh, in the in the womb of Devahuti. So it made everybody happy. Okay, so text number 8. At the time of the Lord's appearance, the demigods flying freely in the sky showered flowers. All the directions, all the waters, and everyone's mind became very satisfied and full. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is learned herewith that in the higher sky, there are living entities who can travel through the air without being hampered. Although we can travel in outer space, we are hampered by so many impediments. But they are not. We learn from the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam that the inhabitants of the planet called Siddhaloka can travel in space from one planet to another without impediment. They showered flowers on the earth when Lord Kapila, the son of Kardama, appeared. Okay, well, Lord Kapila is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's the son of Kardama Muni and Devahuti. Text number 9. Brahma, the firstborn living being, went along with Marichi and other sages to the place of Kardama's hermitage, which was surrounded by the river Saraswati. And the Saraswati River existed at that time. Right now, it's not visible anymore. It's still there, but it's not visible. Brahma is called, in purport, Brahma is called Swayambhu because he is not born of any material father and mother. He is the first living creature and is born from the lotus, which grows from the abdomen of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Therefore, he is called Swayambhu, self-born. Okay, very interesting. Okay, text number 10. And text number 10 says, Maitreya continued, O killer of the enemy, the unborn Lord Brahma, who is almost independent in acquiring knowledge, could understand that a portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his quality of pure existence had appeared in the womb of Devahuti, just to explain the complete state of knowledge known as Sankhya Yoga. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, it is stated that the Lord himself, we're reading from third canto, chapter 24, verse number 10. In Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, it is stated that the Lord himself is the compiler of Vedanta Sutra. And he is the perfect knower of Vedanta Sutra. Similarly, the Sankhya philosophy is compiled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his appearance as Kapila. There is an imitation Kapila who has a Sankhya philosophy system, but Kapila, the incarnation of God, is different from that Kapila, or the false Kapila. Kapila, the son of Kardama Muni, in his system of Sankhya philosophy, very explicitly explained not only the material world, but also the spiritual world. Brahma could understand this fact because he is Swarat, almost independent in receiving knowledge. He is called Swarat because he did not go to any school or college to learn, but learned everything from within. Very interesting statement. He learned everything from within. That means he's being taught by Paramatma, not by nonsense teachers. Because Brahma is the first living creature within this universe, he had no teacher. His teacher was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, who is seated in the heart of every living creature. Brahma acquired knowledge directly from the Supreme Lord within the heart. Therefore, he is sometimes called Swarat and Aja. Another important point is stated here. Sat bin Sena. When the Supreme Personality Godhead appears, he brings with him all his paraphernalia of Vaikuntha. Therefore, his name, his form, his quality, his paraphernalia, and his entourage all belong to the transcendental world. Real goodness is in the transcendental world. Here in the material world, the quality of goodness is not pure. Goodness may exist, but there must also be some tinges of passion and ignorance. In the spiritual world, the unalloyed quality of goodness prevails. There, the quality of goodness is called Sudasattva, pure goodness. Another name for Sudasattva is Vasudeva, because God is born from Vasudeva. Another meaning is that when one is purely situated in the qualities of goodness, he can understand the form, name, quality, paraphernalia, and entourage of the Supreme Personality of God. The word Amsena also indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna appeared as Kapila Deva in a proportion of his, meaning Krishna's portion. God expands either as Kala or as Amsa. Amsa means direct expansion, and Kala means expansion of the expansion. There is no difference between the expansion and the expansion of the expansion, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly, as there is no difference between one candle and another. But still, the candle from which the others are lit is called the original. Krishna, therefore, is called the original Para Brahman, or the ultimate Godhead and cause of all causes. Okay, so let me read this verse again. It's Canto 3, chapter 24, verse 10. Maitreya continued. So Maitreya is speaking to Vidura. O killer of the enemy, the unborn Lord Brahma, who is almost independent, who is almost independent in acquiring knowledge, could understand that a portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his quality of pure existence had appeared in the womb of Devahuti just to explain the complete state of knowledge known as Sankhya Yoga. So Kapila Muni is the uh, child of Devahuti, Kardama Muni. He is a pure devotee and incarnation of the Lord. All right. So yeah, and a very important point is made here in the purport in the first sentence. It says, in Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, it is stated that the Lord himself is the compiler of Vedanta Sutra, and he is the perfect knower of Vedanta Sutra. Similarly, the Sankhya philosophy is compiled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his appearance as Kapila. There is an imitation Kapila who has a Sankhya philosophy system, but Kapila, the incarnation of God, is different from the Kapila, from that Kapila. Now you see how confusing it can be. There's a real Kapila and a false Kapila. And the Kapila, the philosophy of uh, Vedanta,
Okay.
Sankhya, that's being taught in school is the Sankhya of the false Kapila. And so today, when they talk about Sankhya in the so-called Vedic schools, they're teaching the false Kapila Sankhya, which is very sad. Okay, so there is an imitation Kapila who has a Sankhya philosophical system, but Kapila, the incarnation of God, is different from that Kapila. Kapila, the son of Kardama Muni, in his system of Sankhya philosophy, very explicitly explained not only the material world, but also the spiritual worlds. Very significant statement. So that shows that the Kapila, the false Kapila, didn't do that, but the real Kapila did. Not only explain the material world, but explain the spiritual world. Brahma could understand this fact because he is Swarat, almost independent in receiving knowledge. Well, yeah, Brahma is not the supreme personality of Godhead, but he's close. Uh, he is called Swarat because he did not go to any school or college to learn. Well, that was his good fortune. uh, but learned everything from within because Brahma is the first living creature within this universe. He had no teacher. His teacher was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, who is seated in the heart of every living creature. Brahma acquired knowledge directly from the Supreme Lord within the heart. Therefore, he is sometimes called Swarat and Aja. Now, we should meditate upon these statements here that God is present in the heart of every living entity, and from him comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So we should pray every day to get uh, knowledge and remembrance. And if there is forgetfulness, we should forget nonsense, but not Krishna. Okay, so there's a real Kapila Muni and there's a false Kapila Muni. There's real Sankhya philosophy and there's false Sankhya philosophy. And what's being taught today is the false Sankhya philosophy. So what's the difference between the real Sankhya and the false? Well, the real Sankhya is Krishna consciousness, and the false Sankhya is something else. It's not Krishna consciousness. But that's what's being taught by the scholars in the schools today in India and other places. It's not the real Sankhya, it's the false Sankhya. Now we can see how many different ways people are misled in Kali Yuga. There's a real Sankhya, there's a false Sankhya. So we have to therefore follow the path of acharyas, bona fide Vaishnava acharyas, in the Brahma Gaudiya Sampradaya. Otherwise, it's very easy to be misled. There's so many, let's say, bogus so-called teachers of Sankhya. Sankhya means that you are quantifying things. It's like modern science, like the modern uh, uh, scientists. They quantify everything. Right? But in the false Sankhya, they don't quantify. They only have 24, uh, let's say, principles that they explain. The 25th principle is the living entities, and uh, the 25th principle is Krishna himself. So they don't explain that. They just go up to 24 elements of material nature. So that unfortunately misleads people. So unless we read Bhagavatam and hear it from bona fide devotees, there's so many ways that we can be misled. So many ways. Uh, and it's a shame because uh, the mass of people are misled. You have to hear Bhagavatam spoken by bona fide devotees in a very, let's say, careful way, and continually hear it, because there's so many subtle things uh, in the material world, like real Kapila, false Kapila, real Sankhya, false Sankhya. All these things are bewildering. So which Sankhya are they teaching? The false Sankhya in the schools. So where are you going to get the real Sankhya? You're only going to get it Srimad Bhagavatam. You're not going to get it anywhere. And Srimad Bhagavatam with Srila Prabhupada's purports. You can have, it's possible to have Srimad Bhagavatam without Prabhupada's purports. Then you still will be misled. And here it says, let's see, Maitreya continued, O killer of the enemy, the unborn Lord Brahma, who is almost independent in acquiring knowledge, could understand that a portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his quality of pure existence, had appeared in the womb of Devahuti just to explain the complete state of knowledge known as Sankhya Yoga. Okay, so we read the verse, but without reading the purport, we're going to be misled. Why? Because it says here, there is an imitation Kapila who has a Sankhya philosophical system, but Kapila, the incarnation of God, is different from that Kapila. Now, how could you understand that by just reading the verse? You can't. We need the explanation of Srila Prabhupada. Kapila, the son of Kardama Muni, in his system of Sankhya philosophy, very explicitly explained not only the material world, but also the spiritual world. Okay, so that's implying that the false Kapila is only talking about the material world and not really talking about the spiritual world. Okay, so without Prabhupada's purport, uh, we would be completely misled. And that's what's happening. If you go into the colleges and you want to study Sankhya Yoga by Kapila Muni, how the heck would you know that there's a false Sankhya philosophy and a false Kapila Muni? you wouldn't you you wouldn't know that for sure. And then and you wouldn't be able to understand the difference between the false Sankhya Yoga and the real Sankhya Yoga. Well, the main difference is that the false Sankhya Yoga is only talking about the material world. It's not talking about the spiritual world. So you'll be misled, as so many people are being misled. So it says there is an imitation Kapila who has a Sankhya philosophical system, but Kapila, the incarnation of God, is different from that Kapila. Kapila, the son of Kardama Muni, in his system of Sankhya philosophy, very explicitly explained not only the material world, but also the spiritual world. So now we know what the difference is between the real Sankhya Yoga and the false Sankhya Yoga, the real Kapila Muni and the false Kapila Muni. Brahma could understand this fact because he is Swarat, almost independent in receiving knowledge. Well, why does it say it's almost independent? Well, because he is still slightly influenced by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Therefore, he can make mistakes. And it says Brahma could understand this fact because he is Swarat, almost independent in receiving knowledge. He is called Swarat because he did not go to any school or not college to learn, but learn everything from within. Ah, very interesting. That's why I say don't go to college. It's a waste of time. You come and hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, then you'll get real substantial knowledge. You go to school, you'll be misled, unfortunately. And by the way, they don't teach this in school anyway. You know, very few kids want to have a major in Vedic philosophy. You know. And the Vedic philosophy that they study is the false Vedic philosophy. It's not the real Vedic philosophy. So there's so many pitfalls in the material world today, and it's very sad, very, very sad. But since Prabhupada has taken so much time and effort to tell us what the truth is, we are very fortunate. Otherwise, who? I mean, look, we're in page. What page is this? 285th page on the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, if you're not a devotee, if you're not in ISKCON, how are you going to know this? I mean, already this is the third canto, right? That means there's two other cantos before the. And I mean, nobody's gonna have any access to this unless they come to Krishna consciousness. Okay? And Prabhupada is methodically going verse by verse and explaining things. And how can you figure out that it's a real Kapila and a false Kapila? When I long time ago, before I was a devotee, I went to the Indian embassy in France to look at their library. They had a free library. And I saw these books, big books like that, Sankhya Yoga and this yoga and that yoga. And I just opened one book. It was on Sankhya Yoga. And I just looked at it a little bit like this, and then I just, let go of the book. I said, I'm not even going to try and read this. It's too complicated, right? And that was the false Sankhya Yoga. So I didn't even know it was false Sankhya Yoga. And but I could tell that I didn't want to read that book because it's a big book like this, and it had so many different words in it that I didn't understand. And I just walked out. I just walked back out of the Indian embassy library because I couldn't figure out what was going on. It's just the big books like this, on Sankhya, this yoga, that yoga. It was bewildering. Now I know I did the right thing because there's a real Kapila Muni and a false Kapila Muni. There's a real Sankhya Yoga and false Sankhya Yoga. The real Sankhya Yoga explains the material and spiritual world. The false Sankhya Yoga only talks about the material world. And how are you going to figure this out? Right? That's why, I put a big X on Indian philosophy that day. And it's a long time ago before I was a devotee. I said, no, I'm not going to waste my time reading all these books. They had big books like this in the library. And, I couldn't make heads or tails about it. And fortunately, I didn't waste my time. I did read something, uh, uh, but I never understood anything. There were so many words I couldn't understand, and it just nothing made sense. So I said, okay, let's put a big X on not Hindu, but Vedic knowledge, right? And good thing I did that. And Prabhupada says if you take the time and effort to understand Mayavad philosophy, you risk never understanding Krishna consciousness. Never. And this is what's being taught in the colleges. If you take courses in Indian philosophy, they're going to teach you the false Kapila, Sankhya, and all other nonsense things, and you'll never really understand the truth. Even though you might even get a PhD in the subject. In fact, most people that get PhDs, even devotees, you ask them a simple question, and the answer they give you, you get more confused after hearing the answer than before. They'll say, well, there's this thing, and this that thing, and then so and so says this, and so and so says that. You get more confused, uh, eh, after hearing the explanations of the experts than before. Okay. So that's what I like about Prabhupada. It doesn't lead you on a uh, let's say false uh, let's say false um trajectory. It gives direct, you know, fact. You know why? Because he knows what the truth is, so he's not going to mislead anyone. So here he's saying there's a real Kapila Muni and there's a false Kapila Muni, and there's the real Sankhya Yoga and false Sankhya Yoga. And he says that the false Sankhya Yoga doesn't talk about the spiritual world, only talks about the material world. Okay. Um, he says another important point is stated here. Satven Satvan Nam Sena. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears, he brings with him all his paraphernalia of Vaikuntha. Therefore, his name, his form, his quality, his paraphernalia, and give a second, his entourage all belong to the transcendental world. Okay, now that's a very significant statement. Whenever Krishna appears, he appears with all his incarnations and all his potencies. Right? Now, we may not realize that, but that's the fact. And his entourage, all his expansions come with him. It's not just him, it's all his expansions also come with him. And they take birth in different, uh, let's say, uh, so-called human forms. So when he comes as Lord Chaitanya, all the associates of the Lord are different incarnations of the Lord. See? Uh, so this is like a little bit difficult to understand, but this is the difference between mundane knowledge and real knowledge. So that's why Prabhupada said that another important point is stated here. Satvinam Sena. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears, he brings with him all his paraphernalia of Vaikuntha. Now, that's a huge statement. All his paraphernalia of Vaikuntha. I mean, that you're talking about something gigantic, right? All his paraphernalia of Vaikuntha, that's unlimited paraphernalia, and devotees, and therefore his name, his form, his quality, his paraphernalia, and his entourage, all his different incarnations, and all his devotees. They all belong to the transcendental world. So whenever there is an incarnation of Krishna, whether it's like Lord Chaitanya or others, everybody is there for the spiritual world. Real goodness is in the transcendental world. Here in the material world, the quality of goodness is not pure. Goodness may exist, but there must also be some tinges of passion and ignorance. So therefore, everything in the material world has to be somewhat or completely, let's say, contaminated. Even the mode of goodness is not pure goodness. Goodness may exist, but there must also be some tinges of passion and ignorance. In the spiritual world, the unalloyed quality of goodness prevails. There, the quality of goodness is called Sudasattva, pure goodness. Another name for Sudasattva is Vasudeva, because God is born from Vasudeva. Another meaning is that when one is purely situated in the qualities of goodness, he can understand the form, name, quality, paraphernalia, and entourage of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Amsena also indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, appeared as Kapila Deva in a portion of his portion. God expands either as Kala or as Amsa. Amsa means direct expansion, and Kala means expansion of the expansion. There's no difference between the expansion and the expansion of the expansion and the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly, as there is no difference between one candle and another. And as you see, Prabhupada's taking a lot of effort, or making a lot of effort to explain things. Otherwise, it's very, let's say, possible that we are misled just by reading things on our own. And he gives wonderful examples. He says that as there is no difference between one candle and another, but still the candle from which the others are all lit is called the original. Krishna, therefore, is called the Param Brahma, or the ultimate Godhead and cause of all causes. Well, when you start studying Vedic literature, you'll see that there are many different incarnations of Krishna. And how can you know that they are all Krishna unless someone explains it? Otherwise, you could be misled to think they're all different living entities. But Krishna can expand himself infinitely. He's not limited to only one expansion. Usually, yogis can expand themselves 9 times, but that's it. They can't go beyond that. And Krishna can expand himself infinitely. So how are you going to understand all this unless it's explained? And that's why Prabhupada writes purports. He's explaining all these subtleties that you would not understand simply by reading the verses. And just like he says, God expands either as Kala or as Amsa. Amsa means direct expansion, and Kala means expansion of the expansion. There's no difference between the expansion of the expansion, and the Supreme Personality Godhead directly, as there is no difference between one candle and another. So these are all fine points and subtle points that we would not understand simply by reading the verse. But thank God we have purports. And that's why he says, purport by his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, because it's something very special to have these purports. Okay. Now, if you can get other books, you can have the Srimad Bhagavatam with the purports of previous acharyas also, right? However, if you read them, they're good. They're not bad. They're bona fide devotees. But Prabhupada's books are much more, let's say, detailed information uh, because he fills in all the different cracks and subtleties that you wouldn't get in other books with commentaries by the uh, Vaishnava Acharyas. Why? Because Prabhupada is taking into account that we do not have a basis of knowledge in the West. Uh, we're starting from, like minus and not plus. And so he's taking a lot of time to explain all these different subtleties. Now, how can we figure out there's a real Kapila and there's a false Kapila? There's real Sankhya and a false Sankhya. We wouldn't be able to figure it out. That's why when I went into the Indian embassy in Paris and I went to the library, and then I saw all these big books, big thick books. I saw the book on Sankhya. It was really big like that. And I just fingered the pages a little bit in that book, and then I just closed it. I said, well, that puts a big X on the Indian philosophy. I don't want to waste my time trying to understand everything. You know, it was just too complicated. It's only when I read Bhagavad Gita by Srila Prabhupada that it started to make sense. But when I saw that big book on Sankhya Yoga in the Indian embassy, it didn't make sense at all to me. There were too many words I couldn't understand, and they're talking about this and that. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm not going to even waste my time trying to learn this. Good thing I did that. Okay, so now we'll go to text 11. After worshiping the Supreme Lord with gladdened senses and a pure heart for his intended activities as an incarnation, Brahma spoke as follows to Kardama and Devahuti. Well, it's a very nice statement. It said, after worshiping the Supreme Lord with gladdened senses, in other words, he was happy to do it, and pure heart for his intended activities as an incarnation. Brahma spoke as follows to Kardama and Devahuti. Well, yeah, Brahma is an incarnation. And uh, Brahma worships Krishna, the Supreme Lord. So these things are important to know. I mean, Brahma is not God. He's the servant of Krishna. Although he's very powerful, he's a secondary creator of the material world. But he's a devotee. And he understands that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. There are past times where he was testing Krishna, because at one point he saw Krishna as a little baby, so a little bit confused. And he tried to test to see if, he actually is the supreme personality of God. Of course, he learned the hard way. Okay, so in this purport, next to 11, what is as explained in Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, anyone who understands the transcendental activities, the appearance and the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be considered liberated. Yeah, I know that verse. Huh? Janma karma chamye divyam evam yo viti tatpata jakudeham punarjan naiti mameti soarjana. Very important verse. Anyone who understands the transcendental activities, the appearance and the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be considered liberated. Well, okay, now this is real knowledge. We should learn what the transcendental activities are of the Lord. All his activities are transcendental. The appearance and disappearance of the Lord. And so if you take the time to understand this, then you'll be considered liberated. So, there's just so much time we have in our life. What are we going to do to become liberated? You're not going to be liberated by going down these false paths of speculation. We have to go on the direct path of genuine knowledge. And there are many pitfalls in Kali Yuga. There's a real computer, there's a false computer. There's a real Sankhya philosophy, there's a false Sankhya philosophy. Unless we always stay on the right path, we can go for years and years, right up to the moment of death, completely bewildered, and by studying the wrong knowledge, so-called knowledge. And that's what's happening today. They're not teaching the direct knowledge of Krishna in schools. They don't even have courses in most schools about the Vedic knowledge. And when there is Vedic knowledge, it's the false Sankhya. It's the false explanation, not the real explanation. So how can a person be fortunate enough to understand the Vedic knowledge only if they have the association of devotees? No other way. They're not going to figure out all the pitfalls on by themselves. And they're going to take time to understand all those pitfalls. And when someone asks them a question, they'll talk about this and talk about that and just confuse people. That's why I like Prabhupada. He did not beat around the bush and talk nonsense. Everything he said was bona fide. And whenever he spoke, he would always give the Shastric references of what he said. So that was because he was bona fide Vaishnava. He always was speaking shastrically. It's very important to understand this. He never gave his personal opinion. He only spoke shastrically. Therefore, you have faith that what he's saying is the truth because he's backing it up with shastric evidence. Okay. Um, all right. So Brahma, therefore, is a liberated soul. Why? Anyone who understands the transcendental activities, the appearance and the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be considered liberated. Brahma, therefore, is a liberated soul. Although he is in charge of this material world, he is not exactly like the common living entity, since he is liberated from the majority of the follies of the common living entities. He was in knowledge of the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he therefore worshiped the Lord's activities. And with a glad heart, he also praised Kardama Muni because the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Kapila had appeared as his son. One who can become the father of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is certainly a great devotee. There's a verse spoken by a Brahmana in which he says that he does not know what the Vedas and what the Puranas are, but while others might be interested in the Vedas or Puranas, he is interested in Nanda Maharaj, who appeared as the father of Krishna. The Brahmana wanted to worship Nanda Maharaj because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as a child, crawled in the yard of his house. These are some of the good sentiments of devotees. If a recognized devotee brings forth the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his son, how he should be praised. Brahma, therefore, not only worshipped the incarnation of Godhead Kapila, but he also praised his so-called father, Kardama Muni. These are wonderful statements by Prabhupada. And okay, let's take a look at a few of these things. Let's read this one more time. After worshiping the Supreme Lord with gladdened senses, and a pure heart for his intended activities as an incarnation, Brahma spoke as follows to Kardama and Devahuti. Well, gladdened senses and a pure heart for his intended activities as an incarnation. They're beautiful statements by Srila Prabhupada. But that's actually the verse, but it's just beautiful statements. Gladdened senses and a pure heart for his intended activities as an incarnation. Okay, so Brahma is speaking with a gladdened heart and gladdened senses and a pure heart for his intended activities as an incarnation. Okay, so let's see what it says. He quotes this verse: anyone who understands the transcendental activities, the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be considered liberated. That's what we study every day. So if we are serious about this study, we will be liberated. We understand the transcendental activities, the appearance and the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Brahma, therefore, is a liberated soul. Although he is in charge of this material world, he is not exactly like the common living entity. Since he is liberated from the majority of the follies, follies is a great word, Follies, look that up. Follies means, uh, foolish, uh, foolish philosophies, foolish statements. And he says, since he is liberated from the majority of the follies of the common living entities, He was in knowledge of the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, let's say, uh, let's say you're in high school and you're going from one class to another, and you have about 10 minutes to do that. The kids start talking, in a 10-minute period. What are they talking about? It's all nonsense, complete nonsense, right? Is that right, Samad? When you're changing classrooms, what do kids talk about?
Either like they're like they don't like walk, so they just like be in a group.
Yeah, they're in a
They're
group
talking, but I just try to like walk as fast as possible. So
so that you avoid all that talk.
yeah, and I just try to get to the class.
But what are they talking about, though?
Like I don't know, just about the class or like maybe like about things that like that happen. I don't really understand because I'm not in their group, but like it's like all nonsense.
Now you understand. Now you understand. Yeah, that 10 minutes or 15 minutes where you're going from one class to another. Kids are talking nonsense. Right. All right. Let's see.
Follies means mistakes and foolish actions.
Follies.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This is what most people talk about, all the crazy stuff. If you look at the news, you'll see how much misery there is in the world. But besides the misery, there is a lot of, misconceptions. Uh, and people are, when they read the news, there's nothing in the news that is spiritual. It's all mundane stuff. And then you wonder, it's just like sometimes people they get the what is this
York Times.
New York Times, right? Big thick, the Sunday Times is big thick letters and pages, right? And then they'll read it all week long.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a complete waste of time. There's nothing interesting. I mean, nothing spiritually interesting. Uh, they have recipes, and then they have uh, opinions by so-called pundits about this or that. And it's a lot of paper, right? This big thick thing like this, the Sunday Times. It's just they're just wasting wood, you know, and wasting all these trees to print, complete nonsense. And my brother, he used to collect all the papers that he read, like all the daily news papers. He used to collect them, and there were like big piles like this in his room. The last 25 years of newspapers. Yeah, and when he died, all that was burned, thrown away, junk. And he never. Oh, why did he keep it? Well, obviously he was thinking, well, one of these days I'll go back and look at it, but he never looked at it. He just collected, and that's it's not a good thing to do. It's just
Sell those papers for some peanuts.
oh really?
Guy will come and then we bring the bag.
The store guys will come.
Store guys, there are
They want to use the paper for packing stuff.
Oh, okay.
guys will come. And that guy will come and he will weigh the newspapers or magazines that we have.
Yeah.
And then he will take them and he will give us some
Small money.
batani. 1/4 of the price, maybe not.
No, they are like,
They'll just give you in turn, they'll give you some roasted peanuts or
Uh,
snack kind of thing.
And what do people use it for? For burning things or what?
And those they will use for packaging. India, there is no concept of plastic covers and everything.
Oh,
So if you go to any store and if you want to buy some
Yeah.
flour or like anything
so they give you an old newspaper.
in the newspaper, they'll pack and then they'll make it like a cone. They'll pack and then they'll.
Oh,
But nowadays,
Yeah, it's changed now.
now it has changed.
No,
When we were
plastic.
childhood, when we were children, the newspaper that we get home,
Yeah.
we always used to save in one corner like a pile, and that guy will come and then
did he pay you for it or just take it for free?
he'll give you peanuts,
Oh,
peanuts or puffed rice.
really? Oh, okay. Well, at least you have something real, something you can't eat the newspaper, you can't eat, but you can eat the puff rice. Yeah, my brother used to always, keep all the newspapers, and he had piles of things in his study room. He's never going to read them. He's a funny guy. Yeah. Okay. So what time is it? I think we're almost finished. We have 1 minute left.
Yeah, it's just so that
Any question? Any question?
One question, Guru Maharaj.
Yeah.
In the previous verse, typically only if you're in the Suddha Sattva, you are qualified to be in the spiritual world or go to the spiritual world.
Yeah.
In some of the situations, we read Brahma visiting Vishnu or demigods visiting Vishnu.
Yeah.
But we also know that demigods and Brahma still belongs to the material world. So I'm trying to connect the dots here. Demigods going to Vishnu. Is it more of not the bodily when they have to go to Vishnu, Lord Vishnu, or Lord Vishnu also stays in the material world? Which won't also doesn't make sense because entire material world is in his presence.
in there, first of all, they can't go directly, so they have to go to the end of this material world, and then they're actually praying.
Okay.
So there's actually what is it? Purusha Suktam, Sri Suktam, those things are actually recite that they're actually at the end of the material planet, material world. Then they're praying. So it's not they're not in the. And then there are cases where, like that's a Rugumani, I think, right, Maharaj? He was able to go visit, but that's a visit. So like they don't get to stay there.
If you go to Tirupati, right? There's so many pundits and devotees of Balaji. And when they're walking up, they're all reciting prayers all the time. So that's the way to approach the deity.
More of a inner bhava than physically the gross body going to Vishnu or even a Brahma going to. Most of the times we hear Krishna speaking to Brahma through the heart, not indirectly going to the spiritual world.
Yeah, but look, you have to be somewhat pure to get that kind of communication, right? Not everybody can communicate
In the movies,
through the heart.
the movies they portray demigods and Brahma going directly to the Vishnu abode. Like then this is what and we read this triggered that imagination what they show in the movies.
What did they show?
They're physically going to Lord Vishnu
Lord Vishnu's abode.
abode. Yeah,
Oh,
Lord Vishnu abode is not. You don't consider it the material world.
it's not considered part of the material world,
Yeah.
right? then how can they?
Yeah,
Then how can
demigods are
they
part of the
portray
material.
it? How can they portray it in the movie?
Exactly.
Well, they have to do something. Yeah.
So what happened because we grew up watching so many of those. Now it's
Ah, okay. How to break those imaginations. That's an interesting statement. How to break those imaginations. You come to class, that's how you break those imaginations. Yeah. You hear Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by devotees. That's how you break all those imaginations. Like, did you know that there was a real Kapila Muni and a false Kapila Muni?
only after your classes.
Well, it's not only after Prabhupada's purports, right? Uh, so that's why, I had, when I went to the uh, Indian embassy library, they had a library, right? And I looked at all those books, and I did see a book, a big, thick book like this on Sankhya philosophy, I fingered the pages a little bit. I just put it down. I said, I'm not going to waste my time reading this. I made the right decision without knowing. I was basically, let's call it lazy, but actually I made the right decision not to waste my time reading that. And even before that, whenever I read any author who was an Indologist, I couldn't understand anything. Nothing made sense to me. It's because I was ignorant. It's only when I started reading Prabhupada's books that Indian philosophy started making sense. All these other people, and there were plenty of authors, American authors and Indian authors, writing things. Whenever I would read them, I couldn't understand what they're talking about. And Krishna probably saved me. But when I read Prabhupada's books, everything made sense. So we have to be very careful what we read. And actually, you become more educated by reading one book than by reading many books. Right? And if that one book is Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, that's it. You don't need any other book. You have all knowledge right there. And Prabhupada has taken so much time and effort, writing these two books, and then of course Chaitanya Charitamrita.
So here I just saw the reference. The demigods led by Brahma go to the shores of the Milk Ocean, Kshetrasagara, where the Lord resides in his form of the Kshirodakasai Vishnu, who's in the form of the Lord maintaining the universe. They perform sincere prayers and chant the Purusha Sukta.
They don't actually see him though.
Yeah, that's what it says here. That the demigods offer their prayers in humility and devotion. They may also chant the Vedic hymns, including Purusha Sukta, which glorify the Supreme Lord's cosmic form and invoke His mercy. These prayers eventually reach Mahavishnu, who then either sends his avatar or intervenes himself to restore cosmic balance.
We don't.
That's when the demigods are in trouble.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the way they communicate with the Lord. They don't actually see the Lord.
Not go to spiritual world, including Brahma.
Well, there are some people that were able to go even to the spiritual world. Who was it?
Brahmani.
Brigu Muni. Yeah, that's one. But no, there was another one, nonsense person who was able to. Durvasa Muni, yeah. He was able to go to the spiritual world. And Lord Vishnu said, well, I can't help you. He said, well, you're the Supreme Personality. I said, well, now you're going to have to go back and see Ambarish Maharaj. He's the only one who can save you from this Sudarshan Chakra. I can't help you. That was a shock. It was a real shock to a nonsense person. Okay. Well, yeah.
The parampara. One thing that we read the previous verse 10. That, when it comes to Kapila Muni, he's completely independent of the knowledge. Like when you think of the parampara, a lot of the incarnations do not leave the parampara behind.
I'm not understanding your question.
It will be our Vaishnava's instruction is follow the parampara.
Yeah. Okay.
But many incarnations do not leave parampara behind. I was trying to see Kapila Muni, did he create any parampara? Because in typically we expect whenever God incarnates, there could be a parampara which is bona fide. But Lord Rama, Parashurama, Narasimha.
You're saying they don't leave, they don't start a parampara?
Trying to understand the mistake.
Well, I mean, why would they have to start their own parampara if they're in a bona fide parampara as it is? Right?
And but here also when in Lord Incarnation.
Well, for example, when Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, it was to start another parampara. All right? And that's 5,000 years ago. And he spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. It was to start another parampara. And Arjuna was the first, let's say, student.
So Kapila Muni to Lord Arjuna, there's a break of parampara. Is it fair to say?
I'm not sure. I don't want to say anything.
Well, Krishna does say, right, Maharaj, like that there is a disciplic succession that seems to be broken.
Yeah.
Right. So that means definitely there was breakage, whether it was from Kapila Muni. That it's not, I don't think it's mentioned explicitly.
Yeah, I'm also going there is like these days even the Sadhguru, we continue this discussion like they use
Sadhguru.
they say they Paramatma, like a lot of people are this Paramatma educating them, creating their own parampara. This is what's happening right now.
Basically, they
Everybody
don't
creating
read
their
any
own
books,
parampara.
but for them, the revelation happens for them. The knowledge is coming from them.
They use example like Kapila Muni.
They do. How do you know? Have you been with them?
It's gone. I heard so many.
Well, look, there's so many different movements, so many different pundits, but we just stick to Prabhupada and Krishna. And otherwise, you're going to get confused.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to start comparing. Hey, over here.
Okay, Bhagavad said the same thing, like even Krishna through the Paramatma can also enlighten a person and elevate a person, and they want to share that experience, and then it becomes a parampara. So then when we compare with maybe both are seems to be legitimate because it's still similar. It is telling similar situation in Bhagavatam.
Well, that we're not sure of.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
We're not sure of. We are sure of the Bhagavatam, but we're not sure of things that sort of look like it's the same thing as Bhagavatam, right? So why take a chance of following some imitation when you have the real thing?
Yeah, that's the.
Don't waste your time trying to make comparisons and see if it's the same thing. Just follow the real thing.
Where the challenge would come, Guru Maharaj, is you run into people and then they talk about they're following that parampara. And then now we are in real confusion that at least we are happy that we are following Bhagavatam, which is
they are following Bhagavatam.
They're following the other parampara that is created by self-realization. And at that point, it's hard for us to convince that we Bhagavatam is we can't.
No, that's why you have Prabhupada's purports. And, look at all the time we're spending, reading, verse by verse. This can go on for,
Yeah.
100 years, right? It's not like an overnight thing. So unless a person is willing to spend the time and the patience to hear, they're not going to understand the truth. And many people are going to be misled. And that's unfortunate, but that's their karma. So some people, they're going to swear by, different, yogis and different preachers. But we are fortunate because we've come to Bhagavad Gita as it is, Srimad Bhagavatam, but with Prabhupada's purports. So,
But Maharaj, I think another point though is, see, Arjuna directly heard from Krishna. Krishna Paramatma, right? He's the Paramatma. But at the end of it, he didn't suddenly say, I am God. Right? Arjuna said, I surrender to you. Similarly, Vyas Maharshi, who was supposed to be an incarnation, he didn't say, forget that, Krishna, I am here. Why are you? He didn't talk his own books about himself. So even though he is describing all this thing, and he's putting everything in the perspective that everything is originated from Krishna, but then there is expansions of expansions. So that hierarchy and the originality of Krishna being the supreme personality of Godhead, that is maintained in this whole scriptures. So people who just say, oh, they're taking a few aspects that I can hear from Paramatma, and then I create my own parampara, that's not bona fide, right? Because in this whole thing, parampara, whether it is Shiva parampara, Lakshmi parampara, Sri Saraswati, and all of them are accepting Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, Vishnu and Krishna. So right there, if somebody is creating an alternate parampara and then claiming, they're justifying certain one aspect. But if they teach you that, in the end worship Krishna, then it is a bona fide. If it is not, then you know that that is a litmus test.
So,
what shocked me once, when I was in India, and I went to the ashram of G.R. Swami, right? And at that time, he had this different levels of the spiritual world type of display. And when you get to the top of it, there was no Krishna.
Narayan.
Yeah, there's Narayana, but there was no Krishna, right? And it confused me a little bit, but that was his understanding of everything starts from Narayana, and Krishna is an incarnation of Narayana. And then I realized, oh my God, I said, it's so easy for people to make their own narrative and teach it to others. So you have to be very blessed to hear, the correct knowledge, because there's a lot of different opinions out there. So here, these are they're so-called big devotees, like G.R. Swami, and he's got his point of view, and a lot of people follow him, right? But they don't really, they don't really look at Prabhupada as being some, special preacher. They have their own sampradaya, so uh, therefore, what's the name of the big guy in their sampradaya?
Rama,
Ramanuja.
Not Ramanuja, is another one.
Velukudi.
No. Really, he's a good guy. He's
You're talking about the original Sampradaya?
Sri Sampradaya.
the Sri Sampradaya. What's the name of the big?
Ramanujacharya is the main person, right? Like, because that's the statue that he built.
Yeah, Ramanujacharya is there, but they don't really follow him strictly. There's another one. I forget his name.
Shankaracharya Maharaj.
No, not Sankaracharya. Come on, you know the name. Oh, I forgot.
So he's the follower after Ramanujacharya?
Yes.
There's,
Yeah. They put all their they're following this other person's narrative more than Sankaracharya and so
Is it
forth.
Sri China J.R. Swami, I think.
Chinajir Swami is the current
No, not okay, but J.R. Swami is following someone.
Vedanta Deshika.
Yes, that's it. Vedanta
Yeah.
Deshika. Yes, so they really emphasize Vedanta Deshika. Whereas we really emphasize Lord Chaitanya. Yes. So, but there are differences. There are big differences between Vedanta Desika and Lord Chaitanya. Big differences. So does that mean they're wrong? I mean, and they're Vaishnavas. They follow rules and regulations, but they have different acharyas. Right? So this can be bewildering. That's why, we're very fortunate to be able to have Prabhupada's purports and be in the Vaishnava Sampradaya of, Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it's not that I can't say they're not devotees. They are devotees, but what really, made me understand the danger of different sampradayas is when I went to Tirupati and there was an exhibit by G.R. Swami of the spiritual world, and there was no Krishna in it. It stopped at a certain point, and then I realized, whoa, wait a minute, there's a major difference here. And I decided, that I wasn't going to be. I didn't even want to go into it that much, or argue with anyone. I just said, okay, that's what their thing is, and there's no way that they're going to change, and there's no way that I'm going to change. So we just leave it at that.
Yeah. We're following already established paramparas, and they protect their parampara.
Well, whatever they have, it's not bad, but it's not complete. But I don't want to get any arguments with them, so I just let it go. And it takes time to understand these things. It's like, there's a real Kapila and there's a false Kapila. There's real Sankhya, there's false Sankhya. You see, there's so many easy ways to get misled. So that's why we just stick to Prabhupada's purports. That's the solution. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll get confused.
Well, as
Shankaracharya, does he come under Rudra Sampradaya?
Shankaracharya is I mean, in the end, he became bona fide because he said like Bhaj Govindam, right? He
That was
had-
at the end.
at the end, but he's not actually.
But his
not-
followers didn't follow it.
He's actually not in the core bona fide sampradayas.
Did his own.
Yeah, but that's by request of Mahavishnu only, right? Like out of the.
The main thing is his disciples didn't follow him.
Yeah.
You know, he said, give up all this, you know,
Word juggling.
word jugglery. Yeah. And just chant holy names. They didn't follow him. So that's dangerous, right? You don't follow the final words of the guru.
So, Maharaj, I think the other point is also that in the spiritual world there are innumerable planets,
Yeah.
innumerable incarnations. So each of these paramparas, they are taking you to one particular destination, right? For example, people who follow Rama, they will go to the supreme, Ayodhya planet in the spiritual world.
Yeah.
It's not wrong. I mean, they will be happy there serving the Lord
Yeah.
Rama. But we, as per the understanding of our parampara, Goloka is the highest. So we also go to the, eventually if we are successful in our process, like we reach Goloka. Somebody might reach Narayana, well, it's like, the Vaikuntha. But it's also a spiritual planet.
Yeah.
So it's in that way, we don't need to, I mean, once, and as we also understand, even within our parampara, for example, there's 5 rasas, right? Primary rasas. Somebody might be attracted to Lord Krishna as, Vatsalya rasa. But it's not like Vatsalya rasa is better than, let's say, Dasya rasa, because according to our scriptures only, it says like, once you're in that mood, you are fully satisfied. There is.
Well, it's like you give the example is given. You have different glasses. You have a smaller glass and a bigger glass and a bigger glass. But when the smaller glass is completely filled, it's complete, right?
Yeah.
And then the bigger glass is completely filled. It's also complete.
Yeah. So, I mean, at some point, maybe the differences don't matter or shouldn't matter. It's the serving of the Lord in whatever bhava that you connect with is the most important, isn't it?
Well, everything depends on the spiritual master and the sampradaya. So we're not in the we're in a bona fide Vaishnava sampradaya, starting from Krishna to Brahma and then Vyasa and so forth. Now other people, they have other sampradayas. So there are 4 bona fide sampradayas. So we respect the other sampradayas, the bona fide ones.
Correct.
Right? So you just more or less have to ask people a question: what is this sampradaya? What are they following?
Right.
And you can see, some people don't really have a sampradaya, or they have one that just started, 10 years ago. Some Baba, right? That happens a lot.
Yeah.
So we should just stick to what we know is bona fide, and not worry about, polemics, arguing with others. And then you'll see what's going to prevail. What's going to prevail is when you're completely satisfied and full of love and devotion for Krishna. That's the whole purpose. Right? So if we don't attain that love and devotion for Krishna, then we missed the boat. After all the things we did, all the service we did, but we didn't actually attain love for Krishna, then we failed. So any philosophy that leads you to pure love and devotion for Krishna, it's bona fide. Right.
Or can we say his incarnation, his expansions as well?
Well, he has different expansions. Yeah, they're all the same person, right? But anything that leads to pure love and devotion for Krishna is accepted as bona fide. Now, what is pure love and devotion? We can define it. They're always chanting the names of the Lord, following the regulative principles, and they actually attain love for the Lord. So therefore, they're going to be engaged in a very intense devotional service. Right?
And also, if somebody becomes a great devotee for Shiva, so Shiva eventually helps to become devotee. It's just a bypass.
Yeah, that's the highest benediction of Shiva. He helps you become a devotee of Krishna. And he says that in the Shastra. He says that the greatest benediction I have is help you become a devotee of Krishna. Because Shiva's he's bona fide. Yeah. Not, I mean, you have people who, smoke marijuana and ask Lord Shiva to bless the, the pipe that they're smoking, things like that. It's all nonsense stuff. Shiva is not a dope, it's not smoking marijuana, but they say he does, So that's why there's so much, deviation. I knew one man, he dressed like Shiva. He looked like Shiva. His girlfriend looked like Parvati. And he had Trisul. When he would walk down the street, people would be shocked. He had long hair, and he looked like something from outer space. And his girlfriend also looked like outer space. And he was a nice guy. He was my friend, and but he lived in a cave, and people would go to the cave to smoke marijuana with him. Right. Somehow or other, I became friends with him, and but I never followed what he was doing. But he was, he was dressed exactly. If you looked at him, you'd say, "Oh, this is Shiva."
So it's fair to say that
He
devotion.
didn't dress normally, and his girlfriend also didn't dress normally.
Fair to say devotion to Lord Shiva happens in three modes: mode of ignorance, mode of goodness, mode of passion. Typically, if devotion to Krishna happens, always happens only in the mode of goodness.
Transcendental goodness. Yeah,
Yeah.
Sudasattva. Yeah. You would have been shocked if you saw this couple. You would have thought, God, what is this? They shocked people. This was in France, and they became friends with me. Because they thought I was somewhat spiritual. But he was like a guru, so he lived in a cave with his girlfriend, and a lot of people come and see him so that they could get the blessing of marijuana. And he would smoke the pipe and then give it to them, and it was very crazy. France is a very strange place. Okay, well, we'll stop right there on the marijuana.
Any other questions or comments online? If not, we'll see you in the tomorrow same time. Today again we'll go to the temple.
Tonight.
Tonight, yeah.
Yeah. Which temple?
The Mamish temple.
Oh, okay, good. The home temple. The original temple. Okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Chant Hare Krishna